Hola a todos, ¿cómo estáis? ¿Estáis todos bien? Espero que todo muy bien y todos en casa, bueno, en estos momentos difíciles que estamos viviendo ahora, y aún más tenemos que aprovechar el momento para invertir en nosotros mismos y bueno, aprovechar este momento de la mejor manera posible, ¿vale? Entonces, yo soy Tiago, encantado en conoceros una vez más, ¿vale? Estamos aquí otra vez haciendo estas lives y creo que esta ha sido una manera un poco distinta, ¿vale? De lo que hicimos las últimas 2 semanas. Hicimos como una especie de, bueno, dividimos por partes lo que queríamos hacer y lo que queríamos hablar. Entonces, ha sido muy enfocado en el futuro del trabajo y qué será de este, cómo necesariamente, cómo se preparar para nuevos retos que tenéis, ¿vale? Entonces, ha sido muy bueno y hoy vamos a hablar de algo muy especial, ¿vale? Lo que sería cómo nos prepara para una entrevista, qué hacer. Y hay un método muy interesante que vamos a hablar y creo que yo no lo sabía, pero bueno, espero que vosotros tampoco, porque esto es muy interesante y espero que aprovecháis el máximo posible, ¿vale? Entonces, cogéis ahí algo para tomar notas y vamos a empezar, que creo que va a ser algo muy especial. Para los que no conocéis todavía, Cambly es una plataforma para que podéis aprender inglés, ¿vale? Con tutores de varias partes del mundo. Podéis coger tutores con acentos de Estados Unidos y va a aprender un poco más de lo que es hablar como un americano. Entonces podemos coger tutores de Inglaterra, de Australia, lo que sea. Entonces podéis coger y aprender exactamente con los tutores de este país y hablar con la gente nativa, ¿vale? Entonces yo creo que vosotros vais a bueno, os va a encantar y va a ser todo en inglés otra vez, como ya sabéis, o los que no, vamos a cambiar al inglés ahora y vamos a hablar con nuestra tutora, que es increíble, que es Charlene, y ella nos va a enseñar algo muy interesante hoy. Espero que os guste mucho. So, Charlene, how are you? How is everything doing?
Good, thank you. It's been a busy week on Cambly and a busy week generally. But yeah, hello everybody. Hope you've all had good weeks.
Yeah, it's been a very busy week, especially for us. We are working online and have been very busy those past days. And
yes.
So, well, as everybody already knows, like Charlene is one of our best tutors. She explains perfectly, and as some already you notice, she has a British accent because she's from England. So if you want to have classes with her, you have her link here in the description. You can just click on the link and you go direct to her profile on Cambly, and then you can schedule a class with her. Okay. So yeah, so tell me about what we're going to do and what we're going to talk about today, since we're going to prepare ourselves for an interview. So what do you brought to us today?
Okay, so I've got quite a long list of standard interview questions. That probably when I sort of was doing the list, I was like, I'm only going to put in questions that I've actually been asked in an interview. Which I've done, and I've also got a method of preparing for interview questions. So it's something that you can practice before the interview. You can practice with friends or with family, and it will actually. I was always very, very nervous when I was being interviewed, especially in group interviews. I don't like public speaking. I wouldn't say I was a shy person, but I just used to get very nervous, and I'd never kind of represent myself properly, you know. So, but I came across this structure probably about 20 years ago, and it literally it really helped me kind of get over my nerves in an interview. If I was asked a question that I would, you know, kind of throw me, because you'd go, you know, sometimes you just go blank and you're just like, oh God, I've got nothing to say. And this kind of structure really kind of helps you kind of get over those nerves. But the first thing that I would like to talk about is the worst interview question, which is the first one. And it's called, and it is, everybody asks it, it's the first question. Tell me about yourself.
Definitely. And it's interesting because as you just said that, we received a comment here. So hi Rebecca, how are you? She just asked,
hello.
She just put it out. She just asked here, how could we correctly structure our speech when an interview says, tell me about you? So that's one of the worst things. People actually are afraid with that. So
yeah, and it's really, the reason why it's such a difficult question is because it's what's called an open question. Okay, and the reason why they kind of ask that as the first question is they're kind of looking for clues as to your personality and how you conduct yourself. So it is actually quite an important question. The best structure for it is, you know, the one that I tend to go for, obviously I think it's best because I use it, but is to begin with your name and your educational background. Okay. Then you want maybe a brief summary of your work history. And when I say brief, I mean maybe 2 or 3 sentences at most. And then to follow that, you want to talk about your current role. Okay, so what you like about it, what you're passionate about in the job that you're in at the moment, and then at the end of that, the end bit should be a little bit of information about you, what you're into, what you like, what you do in your spare time. So I found that works quite well for me. The problem with this question is that, and I know from the other side of actually interviewing people, is people kind of panic and they just end up kind of, because of nerves, I think, like talking and they kind of never know like when to close the question off. So I always found this kind of structure kind of works really well. Yeah, just to kind of, so you don't kind of ramble on like I'm doing now because I'm nervous.
Don't be. It's perfectly fine. Oh, just one second. Let me just say 2 things for everybody. So she, as everybody is saying, is looking actually. we can see here right in this side what Charlene is actually writing down, what she thinks it's important for the things about these questions. So people, just take some and write it down because it's very important, and it's our tool here. It's a chat tool that we have on Cambly. So just make sure to write it down because it's very important. And one more thing for everybody who is watching us on Instagram right now, just let's switch. Let's come to our bio in the Instagram bio, and then you have the link to go to the YouTube. So we are here live on YouTube right now, and the Instagram live will end and will be directly from here, just here. Okay, so a todos los que estáis en Instagram ahora mismo, cogéis el enlace que está en nuestra bio y vas directo a nuestro canal de YouTube, ¿vale? Porque ahora vamos a acabar con nuestra live en Instagram y vamos directamente al canal de YouTube, ¿vale? Entonces está ahí el enlace en nuestra bio, ¿vale? So, please continue, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, for me, tell me about yourself is definitely one of the most difficult questions.
Yeah.
And the other kinds of questions that regularly appear would be very similar to tell me about yourself. So they're still what I would call open questions, but they're more linked to your behavior at work. So to give you an example, it would be something like, how do you describe your management style? Something else. How do you deal with pressure or stressful situations? But the technique that I use that works really well is called the STAR interview technique. Okay,
that's interesting. If people write it down on Google, they will find something.
Yes, yeah, so, definitely. So it is as follows.
So that's very interesting. For everybody who is watching, just put it on. Before that, if you wanted to research more about it, just put it on Google. Star technique, and then you probably will have more. But I think today we'll learn a lot with Charlene, so let's keep hearing what she has to say.
Okay, so you go, and it's called the STAR interview technique, and it stands for, STAR stands for specific work-related situation, task, which is the project or the job that you were given, action, which is the actions that you put in place to achieve your results, which is at the end. And it's a really simple technique, but it kind of helps you to put your thoughts in order when you kind of answer a question. It works really well for behavioural questions. So one of those would be, tell me about a time that you demonstrated leadership skills, which is a pretty standard question, really. And, you know, that kind of, the STAR technique works perfectly for that. So before, when you're doing your interview preparation, you need a list of questions, you know, standard interview questions. And then before the interview, you try and come up with 1 or 2 situations for each question. And you can use the same situation but give a different, you know, different slant on it. And it doesn't really matter as well either if necessarily the results weren't that great, because you can always flip a negative into a positive by
I agree with that.
Basically telling people in the interview what you learned from your mistakes and how you moved on from that. So, yeah.
Because I think it's when people are actually very afraid to talk about their mistakes, and if you made a mistake, I think you learn a lot with that. So you will probably will never do that again. So it's not bad to talk about it. Like as soon as you had some knowledge and some learning process with that mistake. So yeah, I think it's a very interesting way to see it and talk about their mistakes if the people ask. But if they not necessarily ask about the mistakes, do you think it's important to say something or put that into some way?
Yeah, because it's always kind of important to be honest in your interview. And to, you know, it gives you, if you admit to a mistake and you explain yourself clearly and concisely and say, I made a mistake here, I didn't deal with that situation necessarily well, but I took this from it. And consequently, you know, this helped me, you know, later on in my career. So to be honest, making mistakes when you're new, especially when you're fresh out of university, you're going to make mistakes, and you have to be able to learn how to learn from your mistakes and identify what they are as well, which can be difficult if you're in a new work environment with new work colleagues as well. So, so yeah.
Interesting. And
so, of the questions that I sent you, which ones did you think were the most difficult, Tiago? Or which ones were you familiar with?
I think one of the things that it's very difficult for, not just for me in general, but a lot of people, is when it comes to the time when the interviewer asked us about our strength and our weaknesses. So I think it's a very, especially for me, it's a very difficult part to put. Sometimes I know a lot of weaknesses, or I put a lot of weaknesses, and sometimes I put just like, I don't know that much strength parts of, or I don't know how to put myself and express myself into strength. But so these two are what it's kind of tricky for me. So maybe for most people out there as well.
Yeah, and that's again. So the weaknesses question is difficult essentially because it's a negative question.
Yeah.
Okay. But there are ways of flipping that into a positive. Mm-hmm. So, for example, one of my biggest flaws is that I am quite a detailed person. I sometimes get lost in the detail, and forget about the big picture. Which isn't a bad thing, but it is something that I am aware of and something that I do work on regularly. It's still something now. And it's actually, I think it's part of my nature because I'm I do interior design. I handcraft and make a lot of items that are very, very detailed. So it's in my nature to be like that. So I'm not sure. I mean, it is a weakness, definitely in business, because you always have to be able to see the big picture, especially if you're working with a team full of people. But what it also says is, yes, it is a weakness, but it's actually quite a positive thing to have someone on your team that pays attention to the details of things and realizes how important they are. So it's kind of assessing your weaknesses and your strengths. And the best thing that I did to answer those questions and to prepare for them was to ask my close friends, to ask my tutors that I'd been with at university, and my mother, because she always tells me the truth, whether I want to hear it or not.
That's good. That's very good. And let me,
so
if we wanted to, for example, we just received a comment here that it was actually from Flora, and she's asking about how the best way to talk about these negative points. If like it's good to, to switch and try to put those negative into positive, or just make straight out like this is my negative points and that's it, and I know I'm trying to improve. I don't know what's the best way to talk about that.
You can kind of apply the STAR method to this. Okay, so if you're finding it difficult to flip your weakness into like a positive trait, you can relate a situation where your weakness was kind of it really had an impact on your career, or it has an impact on your job or your relationship with your colleagues. But then what you can do is you can take that weakness and say, yeah, I did this, I don't know, maybe annoying your work colleagues or something like that. But I realized that early on and I focused on it, and then you tell them the results. So you tell them what you did, the work situation, the person or whoever you, and then the action. So what you did to try and improve on that, and the results of that as well. So again, it's using that STAR method and applying it to kind of flipping your weakness into a positive. But not all weaknesses are positive, in all honesty, and it's actually good for your manager to have an idea of your strengths and weaknesses, because they're often related to your skill set as well.
Yeah, that's very useful to know, because sometimes we get a little afraid to talk about. We don't want to talk a lot about our strength because we don't want to look like I don't know, I'm kind of paint my picture in a different way. And if sometimes we don't know how to express ourselves into the strength and put a lot of focus on the weakness part, so we tend to, I don't know, I think I'm thinking myself in the wrong actually direction that I wanted. So.
Yeah, and it feels like sometimes the interview can take a bit of a negative.
Yeah. To find the balance between those two, it's quite difficult to find.
Yeah, and the opposite is true of what are your greatest strengths, because if you answer that and you come across as arrogant and kind of full of yourself, that's also, not great either. So you've got to be careful with both of those questions, really.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, negative questions are always difficult. I mean, the other one that, let me just put the strengths question on there. Another one that really always does pop up is, why are you leaving? If you're in a job, why are you leaving your current job? Which is a really hard one to answer, because you have to. It's really unprofessional to go into an interview and talk unprofessionally about your company that you work for or your work colleagues. And it will be seen as unprofessional by the interviewer. So it's a difficult one to answer. But there's, statistically speaking, 50% of people change their job role because of their manager, because of either a personality conflict or they don't work well, their management styles don't match. But you can't say that in the interview. I hate my manager. He's horrible. You just can't say that. But there are kind of, I suppose, I'm trying to think of one now, a more positive way of saying I hate my manager or I don't like. I mean, work environment, that's also a reason why people leave, but managers are a pretty big one, and that's kind of sometimes a personal thing. Yeah. But if you do say, I'm not getting on with my manager, what you're kind of implying about yourself is that it's actually a 50-50 situation. So either the problem is with your manager or it's with you, which means you are potentially a difficult person to work with. But you can say, I don't really see eye to eye with my manager. I think we have very different management styles. I'm quite an independent worker, and he's a helicopter manager, so he's always checking what you're doing, and I find that, sometimes a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's very interesting. I mean, Charlene, are you hearing us?
Yeah.
Solo un momento. Me parece que ha habido un problemita aquí. A veces la conexión no ayuda mucho, a veces. Estoy mirando a todos los comentarios aquí y he visto que hay muchos comentarios muy buenos, entonces muchas gracias. Vamos a contestar a todos. Alexander, he visto el tuyo. Adolfo, Jean-Pierre, he visto el tuyo también. Juan, el tuyo es muy bueno también. Ya lo vamos a contestar a todos, ¿vale? Solo a volver con lo que está con nuestra aquí. Solo un instante. Voy a intentar llamar otra vez para que podamos volver con la clase. Podéis continuar enviando mensajes, que así que vamos a volver y ya vamos a contestar a todos los mensajes, ¿vale? Y no os olvidéis de poner tus comentarios aquí, que ya los vamos a contestarlo todos, ¿vale? Así que hay otras preguntas que hemos puesto aquí también, entonces muy buenas preguntas. Si lo que queréis es aprender aún más sobre esta técnica, ¿no? Star Technique, sí, que es lo que estaba diciendo Charlene, es muy bueno de poner y estudiar un poco más después sobre esto, ¿vale? Entonces, muy interesante, muy interesante. So, Charlene, yeah, we had a little problem here with the internet, but we're back.
Yeah, good. I play Netflix.
A lot of people are watching Netflix for sure. Yeah. And
yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, where were we? So we were talking about how to actually be a little polite and talk about when you're not fit together with your management style with your manager. And and I saw there's a lot of people here asking. Actually, a lot of they kept thinking about how to express themselves and how to talk about themselves. And I saw here like two interesting questions. That first one, it's from Alexander. Alexander, he asked if it is right if I talk about my hobbies in the interview.
Yes, definitely. Because often that will be quite an icebreaker. I've had interviews where my background is in theatre, and so that's a fairly common interest for people. So, and then we've sat and discussed about, our favourite shows and so on and so forth. And it kind of, it shows that you're a well-rounded person. You've come out of university, you're interested in different things outside of work, other than, the standard, like what you do normally, which is watching movies, reading books, spending time with family. If you do have specific interests, even if they're a bit nerdy, it's cool to be a geek now. It's like, everyone's like, yay, I love science. So, if that's something you're interested in, you by all means say that. I think I mentioned this before in one of our other sessions. When I worked in recruitment, we would go and see the people who were hiring people, or the managers that were looking to hire somebody. And when we would ask them as a percentage how important personality was to the job that they were, hiring for, I was always really surprised at how high that percentage was. It was either 50-50 or 60-40, those kinds of numbers, because your personality is what will enable you to fit in with either the company ethics or the team that you're working with. So answering personal questions is fine. And talking about your hobbies is obviously not for like the whole interview. Yeah.
Yeah. This comes to one of the questions. Adolfo, he asks. he asks specifically about that, and how could he talk about themselves? Like he put it actually like. Asking about strong things that we can tell in an interview. Strong things that we can tell. It's correct to speak a lot about us. So I think you have to find a balance, right? It's not a lot, but you can talk about your hobbies or what you like to do. I think it's fine, right?
Yeah, and another interesting thing that will Yeah, that's not a problem at all. It's also quite helpful if you can study body language as well, because when you're talking with someone, if they start to lose interest in what you're saying, you can see that through their body language, and it's kind of a little flag that says, "Oh, I need to bring this kind of, I don't know, situation or story to an end because they're starting to look a little bored, or I'm talking about myself way too much." And don't be afraid to be funny in an interview either. They're looking for people that are fun to work with. And, not that, I don't know, fun all the time, but, it's, personality is important. Talking about your strengths in a non-kind of, in a way that doesn't come across as arrogant is great. But I would say modesty has no place in an interview. You are there to sell yourself, particularly if it's a company that you really want to work for. You need to get that across. You need to talk about yourself in a positive light. Accept that, not everybody is perfect and you do have flaws and weaknesses, but, if you're the type of person that is prepared to learn from those and can figure out how you've learned and moved on, all it does is kind of say what a genuine kind of person that you are, really.
Definitely. And let me ask one more question from people who are just putting a lot of comments, so thank you guys for the comments. Very good comments. And Jean-Pierre, he's asking, depending on in the vacancy, of course, but what are the recommendations for prepare for an interview? I think this to study more about this STAR technique, right? It's one of the very important things, and one of
definitely. So
please continue.
Yeah, I was going to say get a list of questions, which obviously I'll post all of the questions that I've kind of pulled out really. And I think I've got about 30. You'll never be asked that many questions in an interview, but. And you basically just got to sit down and really think about your skills, your experience, practice talking about projects that you've worked on, get your friends to help you, book sessions with someone like me on Cambly. There are lots of business English tutors on Cambly. We all work in very different ways, but, I work with students quite often on interview techniques, and I think it is much more difficult if you are a non-native speaker, but your interview is in English. So that involves business vocabulary, it involves grammar, it involves everything. So for me, if it's a job that you really, really want to prepare for, book a few sessions with a tutor, work through some standard questions, because once you get the structure of the STAR interview technique down, you can pretty much apply it to any question. So it's kind of, it's preparation in that way. But I would say use your friends, your family, get them to ask you the questions. And then, come on, if you're on Cambly anyway, set a week aside, the week before the interview, even 2 weeks before, and start working on the questions. The other thing that I ask my students to do when we have had a session, so normally in a 30-minute session, I will do between 4 and 6 questions, which we'll talk about and discuss. But what I actually tell them to do is to watch the video, because Cambly send you a link of your video. If you want to see how you come across in an interview, watch yourself on TV, because it's a bit, it can be a bit cringy, because you're like, oh my God, I sound awful. But, we are our best critics.
Definitely.
So it's a really good way
definitely
to kind of see how you come across in an interview. Very handy. Thanks, Cambly.
And this actually we talked about, and actually we answered another question that one of the students had here. That is Juan. He asked, what is the preparation and tips for someone who is going to do their first interview, like ever. So I think it's just that, be okay, talk about themselves, since you don't have that much experience to talk about. So you are going to have to talk a lot about yourself, your personality, and how you can actually, fit into the culture and the business that you're looking for.
Exactly, and it's not something that we're used to doing. Unless you're a natural salesperson, it's not something that you do. You don't walk into a room and tell everyone how amazing you are. Everyone will be like, what? Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? It's just not something that we're used to doing. And it's fair enough if it's in your own language, but I can only imagine how difficult it would be being interviewed. For example, for me, I'm trying to learn Thai. For me to do an interview, a job interview in Thai, I would be like, oh. So, as much preparation as you can, even like if you're, coming to the end of your university year, and you're thinking maybe to go on and do a master's, you need to prepare for that type of interview as well. It's slightly different, but it's still interview preparation. So, start thinking about that and identifying your skills and kind of move on from there. But I would say definitely, if you can and if you are subscribed to Cambly, book a few sessions with a tutor.
Definitely, it will help a lot, yeah. Because this technique is, I didn't know about it, so it's amazing. I thought it was amazing. And it did apply actually for a lot of the interview that we wanted to do. Like, it doesn't matter what. If it's a job interview, it's for university, or for since like Julia, she asked like if it's applied to the IELTS interview or TOEFL or something like that. So it's basically the same, right? Or you think it's different in terms of that?
Yeah, it is something that, if I'm completely honest, the IELTS and the TOEFL is not something that I'm an expert in. I know a little bit about the exam, but it is still, from my understanding of IELTS is you're given a minute to think of a subject to talk about for, 2 minutes. As part of the exam. The STAR interview technique is perfect for that. If they say to you, right, talk about the economy, for example, the STAR technique would be specific, economic situation at the moment, coronavirus. Your task is how not to go crazy during quarantine, what you did for that, and the end results, It's something that you can apply to almost any question, but it takes away that horrible feeling when they ask you a question and there's nothing, and you're just like, there's no words, and you're just sitting there going, oh my God, and you start to get all hot, and then you start, just saying random things. It's just, it's not a great situation to be in, but it does help.
And this actually happens. It doesn't matter the language that you are from. Like if you're a native and from Spain, for example, and then you're doing an interview in Spanish, you have some blank moments in Spanish. So it's not about the language itself. It's just about these framework that we built during this interview that just go blank in the middle. So when you have some kind of techniques like that, it helps us during the process, let's say like that. Because it is a process that you have to be prepared for. So it's an interesting, especially when we're talking about doing this, as you said, doing interviewing in another language. It is especially difficult. So it's you go blank. It's just like, oh my God, I cannot think about anything. Just like it's just a blank. Nothing in my mind right now.
Yeah.
But it's perfectly fine.
It's awful.
Yeah, it's awful. You feel like you start to be like shame. You turn yourself red, and then you start sweat.
Yeah, and then you're like, and the thing is, as an interviewer as well, you can see that on people's faces as well. You know that they're like, and when they kind of when you kind of rescue yourself, when you actually think of something to say that isn't like, oh my God, let me out of this room. So it's, yeah. One question that always used to throw me was, if you were an animal, which one would you want to be? Because I would always be like, it would always just really throw me. And I was like, oh, and I'd be sitting there thinking, oh, should I say I'm a lion because I'm really courageous, or a wolf because I work in a pack, or, you know, so it's, yeah, I always try to prepare for the unexpected questions as well.
That was quite interesting. That's and
depending
of the animal that you choose, you just like the interview, you look differently for you. Like they will think, oh, that's interesting, or that's not that good. That's not a good animal to spot. But I mean,
yeah, you'd be like, you wouldn't say like a wasp, so I can like sting my manager in the neck or something like that. It would just be, and part of it is like the explanation that you give afterwards as well. So, for example, like with a wolf, they're a pack animal. If it's a company where it's a team culture, where everybody works together, you know, it's a good answer that would, you know, that they would be interested in, definitely.
Yeah. That very interesting. And let me ask you. I think this is a very interesting one here. And Rebecca, she asked the first one, and now she's asking again. Thank you, Rebecca, for that. And she put it, Charlene, it is positive if I talk about a volunteer that I made. What would be the correct moment? What would be the correct moment to talk about it?
You can use that as any situation, you know, like, for example, tell me about a time you demonstrated leadership skills. Voluntary work is key. You know, if that is something that you're doing, what that says to you, the company that you work on, is that you are a genuine individual, that you give up your free time to help other people for free. And it, you know, it's nothing. Talking about voluntary work is nothing but a positive thing in an interview, especially if you are coming out of university, or maybe coming out of a large employment gap, like say for some women or men, when, you know, they've had started a family and stopped working for 2 or 3 years. Sometimes in order to get back into the field that you want to get into, you do voluntary work. And what that says is it shows that you are pretty much prepared to do anything to learn the skills that you need for the job. It just says you're a good person. So 100% yes. In fact, I'd be finding a way to kind of crowbar that into the interview.
Definitely. Because that brings a lot of interest. Like it turns something... It shows something interesting about you, and then you care for other people as well. So it's a very good point. You definitely should talk about that. And
yes, definitely.
And now going to the kind of a not an opposite, but it's definitely related in some way, because Cecilia she's asking, in a job interview, what is the limit between being just modest or being an egocentric person? So I think it's this kind of tricky question, but in some way it relates a little bit of in these volunteer things. Sometimes people wanted to bring this kind of volunteer thing to bring themselves up, and in an egocentric way. And so that's a very tricky question, actually. Thank you, Cecilia, for that.
It is. Yeah, it's a tricky question, because you are essentially, that is your reason for being there, is to convince them why to give you the job. But unless you're going for anything other than a sales position, you've got to find that balance. And I'm not saying that all salespeople are arrogant. I'm not saying that at all. But salespeople have to be able to sell themselves. It is their job. So they have to be able to talk about a product or themselves very positively. So in that kind of environment, it would actually be viewed as a positive. if you were, you know, blowing your trumpet from, you know, to kingdom come. But if you're going for something more, you know, I don't know, for example, accounting, customer service, that type of thing, it's really important to talk about your skills in a positive light, but not in a, oh my God, I'm the best thing since sliced bread kind of way, you know. And it's also really important to admit to and talk about mistakes. So you're basically not there in the whole interview telling them how great you are the whole time, but you are also saying, actually, I am human, I do make mistakes, but this is what I learned from them. You know, that's kind of how you flip that into a positive. But it is a difficult one. And do you know what I did to kind of get over that? I applied for lots of jobs and went for actual interviews for jobs that I wasn't really that interested in, if I'm honest, and had lots of interview practice. And I kind of read up on my body language and sort of, you know, top tips when people are starting to look bored, or if they think you're, you know, oh God, they're full of themselves, that kind of body language flags. And yeah, I went on, I think in 1 week I went on about 7 or 8 interviews, and just to prepare me for the job interview that I actually wanted.
Wow,
so
interesting way to prepare yourself. That's right, quite. I never thought about it.
Well, that's the thing. If I'm ever scared of something or nervous about something, the only way to stop that is to just go and do it, and do it lots of times, because then even though you're still scared when you go for, you know, the job interview that you really want, you're not as scared. Do you know what I mean? Because you're prepared, you've answered questions before that are similar, and it's kind of, so, you know, don't give in to fear.
You get out of your comfort zone, right? So it's something that you put yourself into tasks. So it's an interesting way to figure that. I never thought about it. Maybe, yeah. And
definitely.
Now, like, Rebecca, thank you for being such an amazing. She's asking very good questions, and she asked again a very good, interesting one. That is, Charlene, can we use phrasal verbs in an interview, or would sound less polite?
No, you can use phrasal verbs. You can use slang, obviously not swearing or anything like that, and idioms as well. You can, as long as you know how to use them and you know the meaning. That's fine. When you're kind of interviewing for a job, yes, you do need to be formal, but you know, these are people that you're going to be working with 8 or 9 hours a day, hopefully for a long time. Okay, you're allowed to be fun in an interview. You're allowed to laugh. You're allowed to talk about funny situations at work, as long as it's related to the question that you're being asked. Because, like I said, personality is really important. As you know, as far as fitting in within the company and fitting in within the team, and also working with your manager as well.
Definitely. It will. You have to find a balance, and it's something that it's always the balance, and never try to hide what you actually are, like what the things that you like and what you like to do. So it's being honest to yourself and with the company and with interviewers. And
definitely.
Let me ask you one personal questions, that the ones that we were discussing before, that there was quite tricky to me as well. That is when I'm doing an interview, for example, the interviewer asked me what other companies I am interviewing for. So
yes,
how can I actually say that I'm doing an interview for the competitor as well? So how can it's good or not? How can I talk about that?
It is difficult, but it's actually quite a positive thing, because if you've kind of picked or handpicked the companies that you really want to work for, and you've managed to get to the interview stage, to one or two or three companies, if that's the case, what that says is that you have the skill set for the job, basically. They just want to call you in for the interview to discuss that further with you. So I've never minded revealing if I am interviewing with other companies. And often it will kind of have an impact on the salary question as well. What are your salary requirements? Because if you say, for example, that you've picked a company where the salary for the same job is actually a little bit lower, they will be aware of that because, they all do their own little research on each other and their competitors and things like that. Mm-hmm. So they will be aware of that. Also, if, you've interviewed and you feel like the interview went well and you've been offered a job, I've also said that in the interview as well. I said, yes, I have been offered a role in one of your competitors' companies, because what that says is they want me and they're your competitor.
Yeah. But
yeah, so
don't lie. I think don't lie if you don't.
No, don't lie. No,
yeah,
never. And anything, a CV, cover letter, interview. Do not lie.
If you actually receive that, it's quite okay to say. But if you do not receive, please don't. People don't lie, because the people talk with them. The competitors talk with them. They actually can send an email to the other one and actually ask.
Yeah, they can. People within the company will know someone that works at that company, who might have seen you going in for the interview or not seen you going in for the interview. So, in anything, whenever you're applying for anything, just there's no point in being anything other than honest about your skills and, your plans for the future, really. Yeah, definitely. Because it's really easy to get caught out.
Yes.
And I have caught out several people while I've been interviewing them. So it's just, it basically, for me, when I was interviewing someone, if you catch someone out in a lie, it kind of rules you out for the job. Mm-hmm. Because it shows lack of integrity. So
yes.
And I did just want to mention the closing an interview, and the standard closing question for an interview is, do you have any questions for us?
I was going to ask you just now that, because that's good. But,
you? Sorry.
No, but that's perfect. We are like very linked, so it's good, because a lot of people ask, and it's something that sometimes we are not prepared, and it's actually very good if you ask questions. So I want to hear from you. What do you actually have to say about this question?
What I used to do with this is, because I know how nervous I get in interviews, so I would forget whatever amazing questions I'd thought of before. Mm-hmm. I used to write mine down on paper. I would literally take a list of questions that I wanted to ask, some that would make me look good. Mm-hmm. So basically, when I've researched the company, I've come up with, articles about, I don't know, anything, and asked a question about that. I would always ask about training and the room for growth and development. And it doesn't matter. If you've got a list of, say, maybe between 5 and 10 questions, half of those will probably have been answered in the natural course of the interview anyway. And that's quite good. I just used to sit there with a pen going, no, you've answered that. Ooh, what about this? And, kind of go through it that way, because by doing that, what you've done is you've identified the fact that you're going to be nervous and really forgetful, and prepared for it. You've also really researched into the company.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing. I used to do it all the time because I would just forget everything at interviews and be Well, my first interviews were horrendous. But
mine too.
After a couple, you kind of get used to it.
Yeah, definitely. Something that you have to. It's a good way to practice. If you, as you said, it's an interesting way to apply for different ones, but it's with one in mind that you actually wanted to prepare for, and or just like relax, because it will not. I mean, everybody do like make mistakes and go blank, and just it's perfectly normal. So it's a process.
Exactly. And also, like, don't forget that your interview, yes, it's, you're going there to sell yourself, but it's also your opportunity to interview them as well. Because if you've, specifically picked this company because of its work or its ethics, or, you want to make sure that it's not all, kind of, I don't know what you call it, not propaganda, PR. You want to make sure that, the company does do what they say they do in their mission statement. It's not something that they've just kind of invented to look pretty on the website, and, that's really important. It's also your opportunity to interview them, especially your manager as well. You can kind of see in the interview whether or not you'd actually get on, or at the very least be able to work together.
Definitely, yeah. You have to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions, because it's the way you're going to learn. It's like that, especially if you were like your first questions. I think it was Juan. I think it's your first interview. So don't be afraid to ask questions, because it's like that you're going to learn. It's just like that. You have to ask
exactly
questions.
Yeah, and just make sure you think about those questions and structure them, because you will be kind of assessed on the questions that you ask as well.
And let me just say something for everybody. Yes, I saw there's a very interesting comments, and Jimmy and John, like, hola a vosotros los que estáis preguntando si tenéis, bueno, ya hemos contestado algunos, pero sí que tenemos siempre lo tenemos aquí, un código promocional para los que queráis empezar o queréis coger y aprender un poco más de lo que es Cambly. Estamos con un código promocional que es LIVEHISPANIC, que está todo aquí abajo también en la descripción, que es un código que vas a coger y puedes tomar tu primera clase totalmente gratuita, ¿vale? Entonces el código promocional está aquí abajo y vais a poder coger esta clase gratuita. Y si queréis coger una clase con la tutora Charlene, tenéis aquí también abajo la descripción donde vas a coger directamente al perfil de Charlene en Cambly. Entonces, I'm just saying about the promo code that we have here for everybody. Don't forget about the promo code. We are offering the free first class. It's right here, and don't forget there's the link for Charlene's profile here as well if you wanted to have a class with her. Just schedule right now here. And maybe we can do our last questions. What do you think about? Let's
certainly.
I saw here that is let me think for one last question here that we see. There is one again. Rebecca, she asked all like amazing questions. So thank you very much, Rebecca, because you were amazing. And I'm going to ask one of her questions again. And so she put it, Charlene, please, could you tell me what is the best way to answer about salary expectations? Should I respond with a specific salary range, or should I be open? So what is your... Because that is people get very nervous talking about salary as well. So tricky, right?
Yeah, it is. It is a tricky question because it's difficult, because it's you don't want to kind of mark yourself off off the list, because you were asking a realistic kind of asking for a realistic salary for the job that you're applying for, even though that company may not pay that. So what I would do is I would give them the salary, a ballpark figure for the salary that I'm working on at the moment, if I am working. And then I would usually actually research what the standard salary is for that particular job role, which you can do on the internet. So depending on the skill level and the experience, usually it will be, you know, say for example, if it's like a customer service job role, depending on the level of skills or experience in the UK, in the area where I lived, the payment for that role would be anywhere between 18,000 and 30,000 for the year. So for me, I would say anywhere between that figure is that is close to my current salary is you know what I would view as my salary requirement. Obviously, we all want more. If you are going for a job role where you're, you know, looking to kind of promote, so maybe you've gone from, you know, experienced assistant manager to manager, then you can quite easily ask for, you know, a higher salary. But don't be afraid to say that you are looking for a higher salary if you've got a lot of experience and a lot of skills.
Yeah, we listen.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Did you hear any of that? I wasn't sure.
Yeah. If you have experience, so it's a different way to talk about it. So.
Can you hear me?
Yep. We can hear you. Hello.
Okay.
Bueno, a todos, estamos con la internet hoy, os digo ya que, bueno, me pasa estas cosas, pero bueno, los que estáis ahí mirando, he visto que, como habéis visto, hemos tenido muchísimas preguntas. Creo que Charlene ha contestado muchas de ellas y vamos a intentar a conectar aquí otra vez solo para decir un pequeño adiós general, pero os quiero agradecer muchísimo por todas las preguntas y todo lo que habéis contestado y todo lo que habéis, bueno, ha sido increíble y los digo una vez más, aquí abajo en la descripción hay el link para si queréis tomar una clase con Charlene, hay aquí abajo en la descripción el enlace para esto y también hay un código promocional para los que queráis empezar. Podéis coger este código LIVEHISPANIC y podéis coger y ponerlo ahí y vas a tomar tu primera clase totalmente gratuita, ¿vale? Entonces no os olvidéis de esto, podéis coger una clase con Charlene y hacerla perfectamente bien y así ya podéis tener todas estas como hemos puesto aquí ahora en los comentarios, hay ahí el enlace para coger una clase con ella y bueno, yeah, so that's I think the way that you talk, right? We were listening to you actually, so it was just a.
Oh, okay. You did it. Oh, I wasn't sure, so I was like, oh, I'll just carry on speaking and hope for the best.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, we were able to actually see it, so it's and listening, and yeah, I think that since I saw a very interesting one here that if it's okay for you, I can just make this very last one question. What do you think about?
Yeah, sure.
Because I saw one here that's very interesting.
Yeah,
sometimes it's very tricky because Lorena, so thank you Lorena for asking that, because she asked, how can I talk about no official experience? And she put it, for example, in a nursery interview, can I say that I took care of my cousins or nephews? That's a very tricky, right?
Yes.
So how can she actually talk about it?
You can mention stuff like that, definitely, because all it shows is that you have been working towards this point in your career for a long time. You've been prepared to do it for free. All of any kind of voluntary work, any kind of particularly babysitting, things like that, really important. If someone is prepared to give you the responsibility of looking after their child, yeah, what does that say about you as a person? It's only a positive thing. So don't worry about voluntary work. Voluntary work does not make you look in any way a negative. It does not show you in a negative light. All it does is say that you love this so much that you do it for free. Mm-hmm. And that's the type of person that they want to employ, because they know that you have work ethics and that you are prepared to do anything to get the right experience. So, yeah, definitely. Yeah, anything unofficial, when you're writing your CV, if that kind of work isn't on there, you can, I have a paragraph on my CV which is about voluntary work that I've done that's outside of, my standard employment history. Uh-huh. So, that kind of stuff is all important. All it says is that you're a great person. So don't ever be afraid to talk about it.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it has been a very good class. I think people are loving it. I saw that very good comments here. And I think we can close it for today. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Sorry about the internet problems, but everyone's watching Netflix at the moment, so
yeah. Don't worry at all. So, I mean, do you want to say something for everybody, since we had these 3 lessons in a row? So it was very interesting. So, what do you have to say for us?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to the guys that have watched each session, because, we've had different questions from each people and from each person, and some of them have shown up for each one, which is really lovely. If you want to book sessions with me on Cambly, please feel free to do so. But what I would ask, that if you do want help, particularly with interview techniques, please message me before. I will message you anyway, because I do like to send things out to you so you can think about things for a few days before. If you have any questions, you can message me through the app. I'm online pretty much full time, so I'm always happy to answer any questions or anything like that. But thank you for all the great comments and questions, and I hope you all had a lovely day off yesterday.
Yeah, that was good. This was amazing, and people actually loved it. So thank you very much for your time and for sharing your knowledge with us here. And guys, don't forget, if you wanted to have class with her, please, we put it on the comments here, we put it in the description. Just make sure, if you wanted to, you can take this promo code that we are offering and use that promo code and schedule a class with her, and then send her a message. It will be fun, okay? And so thank you again, Charlene. Gracias a todos, muchísimas gracias a todos por los comentarios.
No problem.
Y si queréis oír o tener una clase específica de algo, o queréis que nosotros, hablemos de algo aquí en la próxima live, poner ahí en los comentarios aquí abajo en YouTube, también poner un like aquí también es muy bueno, nos ayuda bastante, y poner ahí tus ideas. Si tenéis algo interesante para que nosotros podamos coger un tutor aquí diferente y hablar sobre esto, poner aquí abajo los comentarios, ¿vale? Es hacer algo muy interesante para nosotros también. Entonces, muchísimas gracias. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Charlene, very much. Yeah, Joe, you want to say something?
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah, sure.
What I'm going to do is the list of kind of questions that I work through, I will put those in the comments on the video. There's about 30 standard interview questions, so I'll add them to the comment, be able to see them and hopefully they'll be of some help.
Oh, that would be amazing. That would be amazing. And definitely, we maybe can actually work on that to put it on something that we are working for our blog. So we're going to have a very news soon. So, but it would be amazing to put it on the comments as well. Thank you for that. Thank you very much.
Okay, no worries.
So, guys, bye. Thank you very much. See you next Saturday. Okay. Os veo a todos en la próxima. Muchísimas gracias. Bye. Adiós.
Bye.